The next two categories are pretty easy, and you should have a lot of this documentation already complete from the original work that you did. So for lighting and equipment, it's very simply energy is power times energy, and as you just saw in the power monitoring exercise, it works out very simply. And so this energy model is really going to be just as accurate as any other energy model. It's really quite easy to estimate lighting and equipment, assuming you can estimate how many hours you're actually using the stuff. So I'll just give a few examples here for lights. I'll say hallway, bedroom, bath, and the hallway, say, is 100 watts. The bedroom has a total of 40 watts, and the bathroom has a total of 120 watts. And then again, this is probably the hardest part, is estimating the time. I might estimate that the hallway gets used for, in my case, my hallway gets used for less than 10 minutes a day. So what is 10 divided by 60.17? And most days of the year. The bedroom, on the other hand, gets used for maybe an hour a day for most of the year, and the bath gets used for probably a half hour a day. We'll call it an hour a day, half hour during the morning and half hour at night for pretty much every day of the year. Let's call it that again. So this would be my estimate of lighting just for those rooms. Equipment, similar thing. Whatever, computers, cell phones. And if you're struggling to come up with other equipment like I am, I've actually got an equipment list here on this tab, and this will give you a good idea of if you weren't able to document the equipment in the building where you that you originally documented, some typical values for different equipments. And I should point out here in this list that there's a few different categories. There's gas versus electric, and there's process versus equipment. And you'll see here, for instance, electric equipment includes all these different things like ceiling fans or electric blankets or shavers or hair dryers or computers, TVs. These are all fairly small loads, and they're fairly consistently used. However, process loads are much more difficult to estimate because they're much larger loads for the most part, and they are very sporadic. So you could use your oven at 7,300 watts for 20 minutes a week. And while the power is very high, the time is very low, so the overall energy use could be quite low. On the other hand, if you're running a commercial kitchen, you could be using that oven at full steam for most days, and that's a significant load on the building. So this is why we have a different category for process loads than we do for equipment, because you'll see when we get into modeling in more detail, the equipment schedules are much more consistent and constant, and the process schedules are much more customized. So enter the power for whatever equipment you come up with for your analysis zones, and then the time that you've got them, that you're using them. In the case of something like cell phone, keep in mind that and actually this is true for laptop computers too, that what you're counting, or should be counting, is the time that they're charging. So that's when they're actually using the energy, when they're plugged in. When they're not plugged in, they're using presumably a battery, and that's not going to, we shouldn't count that here. So I charge my cell phone overnight, so it's 12 hours a day, and it actually draws energy even when it's fully charged. And we'll call this 365 days. And it's still a very small overall energy use for the year. And then finally down here, the process loads, which things like, as I pointed out before, the oven, that is gas and 7,300 watts. So I'm actually going to want to make a note that that's a gas oven, because that will affect the cost, and 7,300 watts, and say a half hour for probably once a week maybe. That might be generous for me. I don't cook that often. So that's not that significant a load. However, when we go over here to the cost, we should be careful, because that is currently linked to the cost of electricity, not the cost of fuel.
Okay, with that, you should be able to complete your lighting and equipment energy use estimates. In the next tutorial, we'll take a look at hot water.